We'll go ahead and call the April board meeting, the Burleigh County Water Resource District, to order. Wendy, take roll call, please.
Manager Maker.
Here.
Manager Mitchell.
Here.
Manager Reed.
Here.
Manager Smith.
Here.
Chairman Landenberger.
Here, we have a quorum, and we'll continue. Moving on to item number 2 this morning, approval of last month's meeting minutes. Get a chance to review those, if there are any comments. If not, okay, got a motion by Manager Smith,
I will second.
a second by Manager Manger to approve last month's meeting minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Ayes have it. Minutes are approved. On to item 3, the agenda this month. Dennis, I think you had one item or maybe 2 items you wanted to add?
Mr. Chairman, Board, I just, one item under item 5, McDowell Dam. I was going to talk a little bit about the financial agreement between Burleigh, or Bismarck Parks and Rec and Burleigh County Water Resource District.
Okay. We'll add that item. Anything else? Okay, is there a motion to approve?
I move that we approve as amended.
Okay, got a motion by Manager Smith,
Second.
second by Manager Manger to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Ayes have it. The agenda is approved. Moving on to item 4, comments from members of the public not associated with a project or on the agenda, but still part of Burleigh County business. Not seeing any this morning. We can move on to McDowell Dam this morning. First item up there, on the supplemental water supply. So good news, following our meeting last month, we did sit down and meet with Mr. Anderson and came to an agreement on the easement. So a lot of effort, a lot of time, but I think in the end it was a good discussion. I think he understood where we were coming from, and we kind of covered some other bases with him, and so we got that last easement signed, so we can start moving forward with the project. So.
Did you let Randy know, Vinegar?
No, I haven't yet. I probably should reach out to him, text him.
I'm sure
let him know
he's
that.
watching, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm sure he's watching every month. Yeah. So, but no, appreciate all the efforts and hard work through David and Houston and Travis. It was a process, but we got there. So, yeah, appreciate it.
And he approved it as we, like,
So basically, the offer that we essentially made him. Yeah. So we did not have to finalize or work our way through that condemnation process.
and
He
then,
did.
so the width of that easement stayed at, what, 40 or
For his, down to 20.
down to 20?
Yeah, for the
But
fund.
we have a full, what is it, 40-foot access easement,
Yep.
correct, Travis?
Yep.
So,
We have an access agreement that's separate. Yep.
yeah, it's 60 feet because it comes from the quarter.
40 additional for access during construction.
Yeah. Yep. So now that has been filed, Travis, that easement?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so we need to work on a payment to get to Mr. Anderson? So,
I was just asking about that.
yep. So we can work with one day after the meeting today to make sure we get that. I don't know if we need a motion for that today?
We'll have to approve it in the bills,
Yeah,
so we'll have to add that too.
okay. Yeah. Do you have that dollar amount? I don't know, Travis, if you've got that handy.
I don't have that on there, and I don't want to quote it and end up being wrong on that, so that it's in the record. I thought it was 29,700,
Yeah. Okay.
but let me confirm to make sure what was in there.
Did you send the easement out after it was signed? Did you send that to me?
We haven't received it back yet from the recorder's office.
Yeah.
I was going to say, once it's formally recorded, we'll get a copy back for the file. And that's technically the time that you can actually issue the check.
Okay, so we can probably just wait till next month. Yeah.
Or you
Okay,
can
let's do that.
authorize the payment based on what it was supposed to be, and the check can be issued as soon as
Yep.
the recording comes in.
As soon as it's recorded, then we can get that and submit it for next month. Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, anything else on that, Michael, Travis, on that? So, at this point, I think next steps then, we talked about the grant submittal for DWR. The next step would be kind of working through final design. So I think as a board, we decided to go ahead and move forward with Houston having that final design completed. So I don't know, Michael, if there's any updates on that or what the kind of next steps are, but
No, well, Travis and I have been visiting, and basically the next step he's going through to validate what the final design cost will be based on some of the changes that have occurred, and then submit the web grants application for that to DWR. Also, along with that will be the submittal to DWR to be on the planning document. I think we have until April 30th to do that, so those will be kind of done concurrently.
okay, yep,
The other ones for the planning document have already been submitted.
Okay.
For the bank stabilization and that, so.
so likely for next month, we'll have probably something from Houston kind of showing what those updated costs are.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on the supplemental water supply? Okay. Dennis, you want to talk about the
Oh, yeah.
5%?
Mr. Chairman, board members, as I was going through the itemized bills in review for today's meeting, you'll see a pretty large bill from Bismarck Parks and Rec. Bought a tractor. As per the agreement, there's a 5% surcharge that Bismarck puts on capital expenditures. And being me, I thought, well, that seems kind of excessive in this instance. So I just emailed Kathy Feist, I think, and Dave. And Kathy was nice enough to respond. She shared the agreement with me. And she, explained, the rationale behind it. In that email, she also did say, in this instance, is a $95,000 expenditure, which is about $4,800 and is that surcharge. And so she said maybe we could split this one. So that's can be discussed here today. But then also she said maybe we could also consider revisiting the financial agreement between the two entities. Mm-hmm. Not anything detrimental about their management and service they provide. I mean, it's very, very valuable. So I don't want to burn any bridges here, but it might be worth just visiting. And so I'm not the portfolio holder. I mean, in the short time, I just thought I should email. So Chuck is, and you're the alternate. And so just wondering if that would be something that we could do as a board here, just to revisit that.
Yeah, no, it makes sense to me. I know we've kind of talked about this in the past too on some of these larger items and some of the projects they had out there and some of those fees. So if there's a alternative way we can look at, assessing those fees. And
Yeah, and my initial thoughts are there's certainly rationale. And capital expenditures can include, repairs to a roof or whatever. And there's a lot of legwork that goes into it that staff does to get those things prepared and to manage that. And so there's definitely some legitimacy there. But I thought maybe in this instance there was just a little less rationale. So with that, like I said, she did email an offer to split that particular capital expenditure, that amount, or that surcharge on that. I would say that if we are accepting of it, which is very nice, and I think we, maybe could and should accept that, is that we would just pay the full bill this month and then try to get a credit in the next cycle. I don't know. That'd be easiest for us, I guess.
yeah, Dave, maybe David. Morning, Dave.
Morning. Well said, Dennis. I think one of the other options, if we want to go this way, is just to knock half of that 5% off and then just pay that portion. And then we and our Kathy could just update what the expense or what the actual bill is to the park district, and we can email it over to Wendy so you have records of it.
Sure, yeah. I think the issue was so late in the game that we already have a check written in the full amount.
Okay. Well,
so,
we can do it that way too. Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Yep.
Yeah, if that works better for you guys and keeping things straight, I can just let Kathy know that and
We can just knock it off next.
anticipate that. Yeah, we can knock that 2.5% off for
That
that
works.
portion for next year or next month. I shouldn't say next year.
Okay.
I had a question. So, not to be critical at all, I'm just kind of curious to the rationale of what we have to do with staff time to get things bid and procure that capital expense. That's what it is kind of,
So generally, what is billed to Burleigh County Water Resource District for our management of the property is our staff's time that are there. My time for anything that has to do with, anything with the Water Resource District is not on the bills. So that covers some of my time with putting the specifications together, the bidding process, the conversations with contractors, as well as my managers in between myself and Dave. Mike, he's not on the salary out there either, so it covers some of his time having to do some of the legwork for that as well. So it adjusts and it evens out with that that fee.
that answers my question.
That is a standard thing that we have done when we did have the Burleigh County Parks agreement. That was the same process we had in that as well.
So, and just for full clarification, I mean, there's a 25% management fee, administrative fee that goes on top of every invoice, absent of capital costs, right? And so all the other costs that they provide there's a 25% overhead cost, basically, that we pay, just so everybody knows that. And just, you know, on that 5% management fee for capital, it does refer to construction costs, so it kind of hints that it's maybe more for construction-type capital improvements versus acquisitions of property. But again, not critical of any of the service we're getting. It might be nice to clarify that a little more and maybe refine it a little more.
And as Kathy said, I think in that email, we'd be open to having a conversation about
Yeah.
that. I don't think that's, just to get things clarified. It's always good to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Okay, good. Okay. Any questions? Thanks, Dave. Okay. We need a motion for that, probably, Dennis, then, to look at reducing that,
I don't
or we're
know.
just, at this point, we could just have it in the record that next month we'll take care of that 5%, or half of that, as a credit. Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know if we need a motion or not, just, I think we had consensus that everybody's good with that, kind of the discussion point of reducing that 5% in half. So giving the credit to next month. Okay. All right. Thanks, Dennis. And then, yeah, I don't know if you want to work with Dave and then either myself or Chuck, and then we can.
Yeah, I'll share
on
the,
agreement.
I think you were included on the email response, but I'll forward that to Chuck, and I'll forward the agreement as well. And since your portfolio will let you guys
Yep,
carry it forward.
okay, that'll work.
Sounds good.
Okay, in addition, on page 6 through 13 are the lease agreements for some of the property out at McDowell Dam. I think at this point, Dave, everything's been signed and provided, correct?
Right.
Okay,
Has Brown signed it? I don't think they have.
No, Alvin has not. For
Oh,
the
Alvin
ag-
still
for the
has
ag
not
lease.
signed his yet,
I know,
okay.
I talked to him last week and kind of brought it to his attention, and he was well aware of it, and said he would follow up with it here soon,
okay,
and I will follow up with him again.
okay. You know, we can always offer to meet him somewhere if that would help too, or,
That was gonna be my next
Okay.
step. I was gonna say, you know, what do we need to do on our side,
okay,
you know, to get this deal done, so.
okay. Sounds good. Thanks, Chuck.
Yep.
Okay, I don't know, Dave, was there anything else as far as updates go this morning? Okay, yeah.
We had an interesting spring. I had Manager Michel out yesterday to discuss a little bit of an issue that's popped up in the parking lots. It's not listening. Had some overhead images to share. It's come to our attention that the parking lot for the shop and access to the boat ramp really isn't a full-on pavement section. There's about an inch of asphalt, and then it's gravel underneath. We have 4 blowouts in that parking lot, and it's starting to alligator and really start to fall apart. leads me to think that the other two auxiliary, if you can envision that property, there's the big parking lot in front of the bathhouse and the beach. That I think is that parking lot's safe, and the loop around out by by the new playground and the bathroom out there, I think that's safe as well. There's two auxiliary playground or parking lots on that access that goes up. There we go. That I believe are the same condition. I wanted to verify that, but this is a map of the areas that we're having blowouts. This is completely out of left field for us because we thought everything was in good condition. It just this spring it started falling apart. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that the dumpster is right there, so the garbage truck movement is really wearing on that. So we had a contractor come out and look at it, and he gave us an estimate on it. The 4 areas is roughly $20,000 to patch, and they would patch it back with a true asphalt section, 4-inch asphalt section. I think that would get us by, but then I think we also have to talk about the rest of the parking lot in the future. I would like to have a conversation. I can show you some. That's what we're looking at in that area 2-3. It's really, and it really shocked me. I mean, seriously, there's maybe 1 inch to 1.5 inches of asphalt there. So I think maybe what it was a gravel parking lot with asphalt impregnation on the top, or maybe a really thin coat, and it just got built up over time to try and keep it stable. And then when you start to look closer, you can see in the foreground of the picture, you can really start to see that alligatoring of the asphalt starting to fall apart. And it's been crack sealed to, I think pretty much the whole thing's crack sealing. So I've been trying to keep it up, but I think, and we just went through the whole capital improvement plan, and things change. We might want to consider putting parking lot rehabilitation and replacements on the capital improvement plan, and I can certainly work towards that and come back with a new plan next month. See how we might work that into that longer range plan that we had worked up. I believe next year's plan was to do that bathroom replacement.
Yep.
So I don't know if we want to add that on top of the bathroom replacement or if we want to push the bathroom replacement another year. I can put some numbers together for the parking lot replacement, and maybe we can talk again next month.
Let's do that. Yeah. Makes sense.
I know our budget process, I may have to put a placeholder. I generally have to have the Park District's budget in for review in early May. So hopefully I can pivot really quick, timing-wise, if we can have our meeting early May, which we will, we always do. And it might work out timing-wise to make an adjustment if I need to say, no, it's not going to be this project, it's going to be that project. So we can also look at phasing some things. In this instance, kind of get back to the task at hand, we think that we can cover Area 1 with just some cold patch and get by. It's a lot smaller than what that rectangle is. It's maybe a pothole about that, maybe 4-inch diameter pothole. We think we can get by with that. In the meantime, with Area 3, where it's completely blown out from that previous picture, we can get in there and probably put some gravel down and pack it down to try and get by. It's going to keep eroding as the garbage truck comes in and does their maneuver. Area 4 is down by the boat ramp. You can see there at the transition between the concrete and the asphalt. The asphalt's, it's almost like it's pushing down the road. I don't know if it's sloughing down the hill a little bit and it's starting to buckle right there. But that one's going to go eventually. It's already starting to unravel right in the middle of that picture. You can see it there. I think we can possibly get by with this one this year. We don't see a ton of boat traffic, and it's lighter traffic, lighter equipment. I mean, the worst thing for it right now is going to be the pickups. The trailers aren't going to be an issue because they're smaller boats. So my main concern is that area for the garbage truck. 2 things. We could move forward with just patching it with asphalt, like we saw with the quote.
Is that 20,000 for all 4 spots?
Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. Yeah.
Areas 2 and 3, Area 3 was about 10,000, a little over 10,000.
Okay, about half of it
Yeah.
just for that
one thing, ideally, when you put down a dumpster, you put it on concrete.
Yeah.
It- Then you can have, this one's picked up by, from the backside of the dump truck. I'm sorry, garbage truck. So ideally, those back tires are sitting on concrete when they do that, because that's transferring the weight to the back of the truck too. So you, in the best case scenario, you've got that set up. We could look at pouring a large slab, which is gonna cost more than 10 grand, I can tell you that. Don't have the square foot, I mean, based off of Area 3 is about 1,300 square feet and maybe $12 to $15 a square foot for 2 foot on center, number 4 rebar, 6 inches thick on concrete. I mean, you can do the math. That's not, it's not going to be cheap to do concrete, but ultimately that's, when we look at replacing this parking lot, that's how it should be. So things to consider. Do we want to just patch the area and maybe do a smaller patch on Area 3 just to get by for the year, and then next year we plan the whole parking lot work? So I wanted to bring all that around and have a conversation with you guys today.
Sure, Dave, I was just looking at the capital improvement for 2026. 188,000 was the budget number that I have here on my list for 2026, which included sand for the beach and then the shower building. But it also had that tractor, and it had listed at 120,000. That's what we put in there. So, I mean, we just purchased the tractor with 25,000 less than that, basically. I mean, so there's some savings there that, I guess in this instance, it certainly would be logical
Correct.
to rectify things. I mean, that being said, it's always nice to fix them, not just patch them, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a good point, Manager Reap. We had talked about getting a few, because of how well that tractor came in, how low it came in, we talked about getting a couple of those accessories this year. At this point,
Sure.
I want to say we're at $6,000 for the accessories it was an auger attachment, a forklift attachment, and then a rake to pull on the back for grooming the beach. I think between the auger and the forklift, they were below $5,000, like $4,500, and then the rake was maybe $800 to $1,000. Yeah, $1,000. So, like I said, we're right at that $6,000 range for the additional equipment, and we should be pretty good. We had talked about pushing off the sand until next year. I don't know that we have the correct amount in the budget for it. One of the estimates that we got back was over $7,000 for just I think it was an inch or an inch and a half on the whole beach area. Of course, we push it towards the bottom, but to make it thicker down there. But thought maybe we'd push that to next year. We are in the process with that shower building of the contract, or the architect is pretty much done. They're wrapping up the specifications, so that should go out to bid here shortly. Their estimate, knock on wood, their estimate was that it was below what our budget number was. But we'll see how that comes in for bid. And that project, we would have that construction done after the season, so we're not disrupting any beachgoers for the year. So there is an opportunity there if we want to do some patching, or if we want to take care of all 4 of these areas, or just 2 of the areas.
So out of the 4 areas, the third one is the one that has the most concern. That's the one with the garbage. Yeah, dumpster.
Yep.
Yeah.
That one right there.
Yeah.
Yes.
'Cause I too am thinking just longer term, if there was a bigger fix here, and if we had to look at a larger repair for the entire parking lot, and maybe look at concrete, how much do we want to put into this now versus putting in a more robust option maybe next year. So I wonder, maybe we could go back and visit with him to see what we could maybe do to a couple of these spots this year to get us by for potentially a bigger, more robust replacement next year. Brian, you.
If I may, I'm assuming some of this is just, that's the way it historically always been. If you were to redesign this from the beginning, would you put the dumpster in the same spot? I'm just thinking if we did larger concrete area, would we want to move anything around, or?
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
time to think about it. I
Yeah.
just envision that,
Yeah.
it's just always been there, so we replace it in kind, but.
From
before
the
we-
standpoint of the shop, I think it's in a good spot. From the standpoint of somebody randomly coming out and just starting to dump all their stuff in the dumpster, I think it's in a good spot as well. Our staff still does have to go around and empty out all the garbage cans that are in the park. I think it's okay, but, you know, would we move it off the parking lot because we need more parking stalls?
Right, that's what I was wondering.
I don't think so. We don't see that much traffic out there to where we, you know, one stall is gonna make that big of a difference.
Yeah.
Short answer right off the top of my head, I'd say that it's probably in a pretty good spot. I just scribbled on there, if we want, we could try and reduce that patch area to the critical area. Where it's blowing out is pretty much where the back tires from the truck are.
Right.
So we could put in a decent chunk of asphalt there and see how it goes and get us by for the year. And then make a plan to do some replacement.
Yeah. The consensus there?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I think when I talked to you and David yesterday too, you talked about getting a discount if we would go with all of it at one shot.
Well, yes, one of the quotes that we received, they basically said, if it's this much per area, but if you do all of them, we'll give you a 10% off. So that 20 grand would go down to 18 grand roughly. So, but like I said, I think if we're going to end up ripping this stuff out that we just repaired in a year, do we really want to put all that asphalt down? And I think we can manage with some cold patch. That's not a large amount per bag, and we can fill in some of those potholes with that and
That's
make it
what
work.
you guys do?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
We buy cold patch. It comes in a bag from
Yep.
the asphalt plants, and then we just set it out in the sun and let it warm up, and then we cut the bag open and pack it in. So it holds reasonably well.
Yeah. Get us by for this year.
Yeah. Essentially, it helps us with potholes and things like that in the short term.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Is there a consensus there? We look at making some repairs this year just to get us by, and we can look to get something into the CIP for next year as be a larger project.
How much cold patch you think we would be looking at? How many bags and stuff for all of that?
Yeah, I don't think it would be a large amount. I can't remember what a bag of cold patch runs, but it's not a lot.
Yeah.
The pothole in that area one, I don't even think it's completely, there is a little bit of gravel showing in that pothole, but it's not huge.
Yeah.
And that's the one that I was thinking we'd do that with, was area one. We would put some cold patch in that one and add a bag here or there if we need to. But if we catch it on decent weather, when it's nice and warm, that cold patch heats up and we can really get it packed in there pretty good, so.
Okay.
And then, do we do anything with the boat ramp, or we can live that by until we do a larger?
I think, just kind of looking back at David, I think we can get by. I don't know that we really have to do anything. If it blows out and continues to blow out and get worse, we can cold patch that area as well. We could even go in there and break it off so it's a nice clean edge and pack some in there. Try and get something so it'll stay a little bit longer for us.
Yeah.
But-
Right now, there's a pretty decent little lip on there where it's coming to the concrete right there
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is.
when we were looking at it, so.
Yep.
Okay. Sounds like we got a plan.
Okay.
Okay. Anything
Thank
else,
you.
Dave?
No, that's it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Okay. If nothing else on McDowell Dam this morning, we can move on to financial reports. Manager Reed?
Mr. Chairman, board members, on pages 14 through 16 are the balance sheets, and I'll just run through the activity in March. We started the month with a balance of $2,041,258.40 in our checking savings. We paid bills in the amount of $152,747.60. We did have income in the amount of $337,095.97. Majority of that was real estate tax income, it's about 263,000. Some state aid, about 6,000. Special assessment collections for various projects were 68,000. That what made up that total. So we ended the month in a balance of $2,225,606.77. Bravera Wealth started the month with $2,496,241.89. Had interest, net interest in the amount of slightly over 7,000. So our ending balance is $2,503,437.80. Designated reserve funds is an amount of 700,000. That's unchanged. Other assets and receivables. So that total current assets is $5,446,113.77. On page 16 is the designated funds breakdown as they exist. We're going through, we're catching up. We had some missing reports, and so Wendy's catching up with those. And so I didn't rectify those this month, but we'll do so in the next month or so. So with that, I would move for approval of the balance sheet as presented.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. Got a motion by Manager Reeve for the approval of the balance sheet this month.
I'll second.
A second by Manager Mitchell. Any discussion? When do you take roll call vote, please?
Manager Mager,
Yes.
Manager Mitchell,
Yes.
Manager Reed,
Yes.
Manager Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Landenberg.
Yes, motion passes.
Before I forget, just an update on the Bravera Wealth interest rate. It's currently at 3.64%. It went down the last half of last month, but it went up again slightly the first half of this month. So that results in a net earnings of 3.39% on those funds. So again, I think they're going to just be on par with whatever else is out there on the CD market. So recommend staying the course. On page 17 and 18, the profit and loss and year-to-date budget analyses, I looked through those. Those look good. I'd move for approval as presented.
Okay, got a motion by Manager Reeve to approve this profit and loss this month.
Second?
And second by Manager Mager. Any discussion, questions? Hearing none, Wendy, take roll call vote, please.
Manager Mager,
Yes.
Manager Mitchell,
Yes.
Manager Reed,
Yes.
Manager Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Landenberg.
Yes, motion passes. Profit and loss is approved this month. Okay, anything else, Dennis, this morning?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, I think overall agreement with those, with those funds that we have. I mean, it's at this point, the CDs are probably in that same ballpark, 3.5%, 4%, so. Still getting some decent interest on that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Good, okay. Thank you. Okay, we can move on to drainage permits and complaints this morning. I assume, I don't know, Michael, any updates on the Keelboat Park this morning?
No, nothing
Okay.
on that one yet.
Okay. The Hawk Tree, I was visiting a little bit with Casey this morning. It sounds like he just received some information and provided it over to
Yeah,
Houston to review.
Right. He's received the stormwater management plan amendment,
Okay,
so we'll be taking a look at that and documenting going through that.
okay. So some additional, maybe for next month, we'll have some
Yeah.
update, okay? All right, we can move on to item C this morning, the Knutson complaint, Kizzy Township. I know Brian, Chuck, and you guys have been talking.
Yep. So I can start off here. We got a drainage complaint. I guess it was dated March 25th. So just as everybody is aware, we have 120 days to act on this. It's maybe not so much a drainage, it is a drainage complaint, but it may be also an inquiry of information. They didn't actually name anyone culpable of damages. And so kind of what's going on, the area sits right off the McKinsey exit south of 94 there. And directly to the west, there's a Fish and Wildlife easement on parcels. Directly to the south is McKinsey Slough. The complaint entails that there's been increased water. Looking through aerials throughout the teens into the 20s, I don't see any noticeable changes. I mean, obviously, Last year was the 6th wettest summer on record for rainfall here, so I'm not surprised that the area is wet. I haven't been out to the site yet, just kind of looking for conversation from the board on how we want to proceed, if we want to look at this as kind of an investigation, if we want to handle it as an actual complaint. It was filed under obstruction to a drain or water course. If we want to go out there and formally say yes or no, if there is some type of obstruction, whether it be man-made or just lack of maintenance, vegetation issue. So that's kind of the background. Kind of looking from the board on how we want to proceed with this. Do we want to attack it as a drain complaint and then answer the question, or is this kind of a bigger question and kind of more of an investigation? Turn it over for discussion.
Yeah.
And Mr.
Questions,
Chairman, I
thoughts?
want to touch on a couple things. Obviously, Josh Loosemore has been out there. He's been looking at a number of things for the Long Lake Refuge, et cetera. So he's got an idea of what might be out there as far as an issue, which obviously, puts him in a position to assist from that process. You might be aware that Barb had submitted a complaint earlier relative to the DOT crossing at McKenzie Slough. We referred that back to DOT because it's a DOT jurisdictional issue. And they came back and basically said, well, it's been there forever. There's no changes. There's no issues with the interstate from that perspective. There may or may not be some items going on out there in the field. Obviously, like I said, Josh has been out there, and it may be an opportunity for you and Josh to go see what's out there and see whether or not that's actually influencing what's going on at her location. Josh has been doing a lot of things relative to groundwater. We had a long discussion and say, okay, it's a wet cycle. Is this a groundwater issue? Is this a surface water issue? Dave and I had a number of conversations. Groundwater can become surface water, and then it could be an obstruction issue. So how that affects, if it's just groundwater, it's just groundwater. Jurisdiction, nobody's going to do anything with it. So the end result is that I think this is one of those where investigate it on site and see if there's anything out there that's actually creating the issue. If not, you basically, dismiss it. And if there's something out there that's actionable relative to jurisdiction, then you can do it at that point. So that's kind of our summary. I know Dave has talked to Barb as well, so relative to the jurisdiction. There are likely, given the, if you want to call it the rumblings of the Long Lake issue and all kinds of things out there, there are likely other complaints where people are going, hey, there's something going on out here. So we may see more of those. But again, the first one, I think we just go take a look at it and see what's out there.
So along those lines, where exactly, I guess not exactly, but how does this relate to Long Lake?
It's
where
outside of
her
the long,
property's at?
it's downstream from the structure.
Okay,
So it's
downstream
not-
of the structure.
Yes, it's not part of the Long Lake
Okay,
system.
okay,
It's in the Long Lake, or Long Lake Creek watershed,
okay.
put it that way.
So it's downstream of the.
Right.
Is it McKenzie Slough Rising? Or is it associated with McKenzie Slough?
So-
at all, or-
It's part of, it's along the edge of McKenzie Slough.
Okay.
And McKenzie Slough, as you know, basically it's a storage area for flooding from Long Lake Creek and Apple Creek both.
Yep.
It's wet. It has been wet. The last few years, as you pointed out, it's been in a saturated state. We know the groundwater is up over where it's been historically from a number of investigations. But so yeah, is there anything going on out there that's actionable? You can find out. But it's not associated with the Long Lake Refuge issue itself. They're independent.
So, its outlet is the outlet to McKenzie.
It is part of McKenzie Slough, correct.
And when you go on the interstate, you can see that water's up and has been up for a long time, and it doesn't look like it's a vegetation issue. I guess there's some, and at that point, even some vegetation in the outlet would, it's probably not impacting the slough that much.
When you look at the overall grading through there, it's basically flat.
It's sluggish.
The water moves through there very slowly, like liken it to osmosis. it just goes. So once it's in there, it takes a long time to get out. So every time you have an inflow, it sets there, and it's got to go in either out the outlet by flow, or it's got to go in the groundwater. And if the groundwater's high, it's not going in. So
But, you know,
It's a natural phenomenon, is our
it
suspicion.
appears to me it's a natural phenomenon, but like I said, Josh has been out there and saw a few things on the surface that warrant, you know, additional review by the board, so I think the investigation is prudent.
Yeah.
And what I also did for you gentlemen, given the discussion on the Long Lake, and we can probably go into that after a little bit, I gave you Josh's rate structure. And the thought that I have is that you approve our rate structure. I'm gonna be having Josh bill anything that he does directly through us, not unlike we do with Braun. Braun is independent, but Braun's geotechnical, this is engineering work. Since Josh is working with us on the Long Lake issue and knows the issues out there, it's less expensive to have him do some things for us than for us to do it for you. So I provided that to you as a reference. And he does bill differently for in-office versus field work. He does have some additional staff periodically that he works with as well, so.
Sure, back to, I would agree, I would have just said a site visit isn't warranted. My suspicion on the drainage complaint is a natural phenomenon. And I don't know if you've talked to Barbara yet?
I have not talked to her yet.
I mean, that could go a long way, of
Yep.
course, too. And just, I would say this is absent of anything physical that we can point to. I think it's, yeah, well, you do the investigation, but I would agree that it's kind of a natural phenomenon. But, I mean,
In the area, DWR back in the 60s, 70s, had drilled some wells, but they're not logged or anything for observation and stuff, so.
Okay.
There is stuff out there, but there's no data to them.
They haven't been
Within,
collecting data.
yeah, within that mile, there's, I think, 4 or 5 of them.
Okay. Dave, anything that you discussed with Barbara?
Well, Mr. Chairman, yeah, I talked to Barb, and I like Brian's suggestion. I think that's exactly the way I would think it would work, Brian, and maybe Josh go out there, visit with her, get the lay of the land. I think that also sort of blends into this whole Long Lake issue of that water, which may or may not be coming down. Is there an obstruction, you know, with Fish and Wildlife Service, which is also on the agenda that the board can talk about? But that might give the landowner some understanding of how complex this issue is. And it may well be that a natural phenomenon. That said, where is this water coming from, which I think was her issue. She didn't get into damages, and I talked to her about that. I talked to her about a complaint, because on the complaint itself, it says specifically who is obstructing this water. Well, she didn't know, and I said, just put unknown. But like Brian had said, it's more of an inquiry at this point than anything, and maybe that investigation would dovetail into the Long Lake issue.
Right, yep.
Sounds good. Yeah, 'cause I mean, she has in here, water is extremely high on my property, so I wonder, like, does she have any baseline, or what is she stating? Is it 5 feet higher, is it
Right,
a foot
right.
higher, or what is that? So maybe,
Yep,
yeah.
we'll go and talk to her.
Yep, warrant some.
Is it impacting structures?
No,
To the best
Not
of
that
my
I'm aware
knowledge,
of.
no.
yeah, it's just her ag property,
Yep.
pasture, et
Sure.
cetera.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Any other thoughts this morning? Okay, that's pretty clear, Brian?
Yep.
Next steps?
Yep,
Okay.
I'll work with Josh.
Okay, thank you. All right, we can move on to item D this morning, kind of related. Michael, update on the Long Lake Refuge?
Yeah, on the Long Lake Refuge, we had a meeting with a couple of managers and discussed the obstruction issue or potential obstruction issue with the Long Lake Refuge outlet structure, and then how to approach that. We had a secondary meeting, and there'll be some ongoing meetings after that. There's a secondary meeting with the Kidder County Water Resource District. Actually, it was a county commission. The Water Resource District members were there, and they had a meeting subsequent to that. They're in a position and agree that they would facilitate the complaint process of the landowners. We'll prepare a form, basically, so that we gather the data that we need from a complaint process if and when it's actually filed. I'm assuming it's going to be filed because they've agreed to move forward. We'll prepare the complaint form. They'll get the landowners to sign, and then it sounded as though the Kidder County Commission was going to hand it to the Water Resource District to do the formal submittal to Burleigh County, because understand the whole Long Lake Refuge is, the structure's in Burleigh County, but the refuge is in Kidder County. It's about half and half. So they would facilitate the submittal of that complaint from their landowners and the Burleigh County landowners. if practical, to the Burleigh County Water Resource District for consideration. It looks as though there's a number of things going on relative to the historic elevation of the structure. It was at 1713.2. It's now at 1716. The State Water Commission has permitted the water permit to 1716. However, when they got their easements do not go above 1716, which means anytime there's water in there, they're actually flooding property above their easements. So there's an easement issue. There has been discussion with the refuge manager and others. They're basically saying, you know, we can't do anything until we have something before us that says that we're doing something wrong. In other words, how do they elevate it up to get assistance? And they're more than willing to move forward once they can get something that they can actually act on. So the scenario is we get the complaint filed, the district looks at the complaint, basically refers it back to Fish and Wildlife Service and says, hey, where are you guys going to go with this, rather than doing a full-out notice and order scenario. So that's kind of where the process is at. We will be having a meeting of the Crystal Springs Watershed Initiative Steering Committee. Steering Committee is made up of Stutzman County Commission, Stutzman County Water Resource District, Kidder County Commission and Water Resource District, as well as some local stakeholders, BNSF and DOT. Now, they're not involved in the complaint issue, but because that project's out there, they're stakeholders in the whole process, so we want to keep them informed as to what's going on with the development.
Because that
So-
if there was something there with that project, that would move more water into Long Lake.
That would move more water into Long Lake,
Right.
yes. Now, as far as the amount of water, we've looked at it, and we had a short presentation before the board, and Brian, I can update you on that a little bit later. It really doesn't have a great impact on the Long Lake Refuge. I mean, as far as the flow-through pattern, it's probably 1.5 inches into their structure as it's going through. It's 20 CFS, so it's not a lot of water. We have noticed, we've done some aerial flights. We have noticed that there is additional watershed that will now be contributing to the Long Lake Refuge through the tributary that we're talking about putting water in. So that's another issue. In other words, as everything continues to go up there, groundwater, lakes and everything, they're starting to overflow. So we're identifying those, and we'll be having discussion with the Stutzman County project relative to Crystal Springs as to what that means. So it's an ongoing developing process, but the issue with the Long Lake Refuge is independent. That's been around for a long time. The easements, the water permit, we've had discussions with DWR relative to what they have for construction permits, et cetera. I need to get back to Karen Goff. She was going to provide me some of that stuff, and I have not seen it as yet. But, so it's a complex process.
Has there ever been any conversation to formulate some sort of a legal drain? Obviously, knowing there's fish and wildlife easements.
No,
Okay.
nothing relative to a legal drain. There have been, and it goes back to what Dave was saying with Barb's complaint, there are people that say, hey, you know, there's a lot of water coming out of the refuge. Well, yeah, because there's a lot of water coming out of the refuge, whether it's Long Lake Creek, which is contributing water, goes all the way down towards the kind of the Napoleon area. There's been a lot of water coming through from the north, which, according to Fish and Wildlife Service, they never analyzed that watershed coming down from the north relative to sizing their structure, which is kind of another issue from a technical perspective. But now there's even more water coming from the north, not from the Crystal Springs project, but just from natural drainage. So there's a number of things out there that might need to be taken care of. We have a federal nexus here, obviously. The feds aren't going to do anything unless they have an actionable item. I can think of a number of different ways. I'll just talk about it from this perspective, is that I don't think they have adequate easements. They've already been talking to landowners about getting additional easements. However, the landowners are say, hey, we're already flooded. We don't want to, give up any more of our property. So I can brief you on that too, Brian, because it's complicated. But we'll get that complaint process started in the next month or so.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Just thinking out loud here, would it be appropriate to set up, I don't wanna say a formal joint board, but some type of inter-county or multiple county?
Yeah. That's a good thought,
I
Brian,
don't
just
know how that all plays out.
because it is two different, water resource districts and counties
Yeah,
at some
potentially
point.
3, 4 if we get stuff and then.
Right. Yeah, let's get this complaint submitted.
Right.
If that's what they're gonna do, and then we'll kind of step into the next steps, and, but that could be something that could come out of this, would be, you know, some kind of a joint.
Yeah, it's an interesting process relative to, is there a project for a joint board, or is it just coordination? I think coordination, absolutely.
Right.
And I'll be honest, I think everybody knows this, the Kidder County Water Resource District has not been very active. They are becoming more active simply because things are in front of them. Stutsman County, the only portion of Crystal Springs that comes to, is in Kidder County, is Crystal Springs itself. The rest is all Stutsman County. So I don't see Stutsman County as being part of the process, other than, you know, their project that they're looking at delivering water, which is, will switch from the feasibility study phase into preliminary engineering, and that's probably 18 months to 18 to 24 months before that preliminary engineering report would get done. But the landowners in Kidder County have basically, you know, stuck their foot in the sand and said, hey, it's not coming this way. And we continue to have discussions. One of the reasons it wasn't coming the way is because of the current issues they have, which are unrelated to the project. So if those get resolved, or if those have a solution project direction, obviously that opens the door for the Crystal Springs project to proceed with less resistance. I'm not saying there won't be any resistance, because obviously you're putting water through. We're starting at 20 CFS. When we get down to a normal operational, we're probably down to 5. But we have to get rid of the existing floodwaters first. So, quick summary.
So, Mr. Chairman, Mike, so you're working on a complaint that will be served to who?
Burleigh County.
Burleigh County Water Resource District, that there's an obstruction to the Long Lake outlet.
Right.
Which is owned and operated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason it kind of falls out this way is about half of the refuge is in Burleigh County, half of the refuge area is in Kidder County. However, the structure itself is in Burleigh County.
And so you provided a rate sheet for Josh, you said?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Who's Josh?
Josh, he's been our subconsultant on the Crystal Springs project, and he's been out there talking to the refuge. He's been talking to individual landowners. We are not going to be the ones handing the complaint forms to the individual landowners. They're going to do that through Kidder County.
Okay.
But given Josh's background and his familiarity with the area and working with the refuge, basically it's an economic advantage to utilize him to continue to have those conversations.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Certainly, this is one of those situations that can continue to snowball and turn
Yes.
into a bigger, you know, if we get into Fish and Wildlife Service discussion on their contributing areas and how they design that structure and how they operate that structure. I mean, I could see this taking multiple years and studies and different
Right.
groups. And quick question, I know Casey, go ahead in a minute here, but what involvement or discussions have we had with Fish and Wildlife Service up to this point on this process?
Okay, we've had several. There's 2 different aspects to it. One is from the Crystal Springs Watershed Initiative.
Yep.
We've been having discussions with them relative to what they have out there, their structures, what they're doing, the water going through. We can show through the feasibility study that we're actually sending higher quality water through the refuge than what they have, which is their primary issue. They said, we don't mind passing water through as long as it's higher quality, because of how they're managing their refuge. So we were going through those issues, and they were pretty much accepting of that aspect happening. And then Kidder County residents said, hey, we got all kinds of issues, they're flooding us, et cetera. And we said, well, that's not a Crystal Springs project, that's a local project. You have that with or without the additional water. So that's where it kind of got to the point to where Kidder County was discussing it, and Stutsman County, which doesn't have anything to do with Kidder County, was saying, hey, if we need to resolve this issue, we'll look at it. And we'll give you some background information, but then you have to move on your own to take it to solution, which is kind of what got us to this phase. So we've switched off from the discussions with the refuge relative to the Crystal Springs water, now saying, hey, you've got easements, you've got other issues going on, and that's where we kind of stepped back and said, okay, Stutsman County's not paying for this. If it's a complaint in Burleigh County, that complaint has to come to Burleigh County before Burleigh County can actually act on it.
That makes sense.
But that's
So
been.
they are aware of these sort of things are.
They are
happening.
very aware of it. In fact, they're, I can't speak for them secondhand, they are looking for assistance to resolve their problem.
but they can't resolve the problem unless they have
You
something.
need somebody to start pushing the rock a
Right,
little bit.
right. They need to have somebody throw the stone in the water so that the higher-ups recognize that
Yep.
There's something going on.
Okay.
So they're not adversarial to this particular
Okay,
situation.
that was kind of what I was
Yeah.
wondering, like, where they're at with that, okay? So they're certainly on board, or at least interested in having more discussions. And
That's
see where
correct.
this goes. Okay.
Yep.
Casey?
Just an informational, I'll have to email some plans over to Mike, but we have a project at the outlet of Long Lake this year that we're working on. There's a bridge just east of the main outlet that, let's say, has many issues. So we're gonna remove the bridge and we're actually gonna replace it with a equalizer culvert, essentially, on there. That's on 102nd Avenue. It's pretty straightforward plan to do that. So it's just a little bit east of the outlet, but I'll send that over. I'm not sure it'll really affect you much, but that way you at least know what we're doing. We haven't gotten the construction schedule yet, but would guess from the contractor who got it, it's probably gonna be around September before they get to it.
Okay.
Well, that's
Thank
good to
you.
know, Casey, because if
Yep.
we are talking with landowners, there might be some discussion, like, hey, what's going on now? You guys are putting other bridges out there, so that's good to know.
Yep. Yeah, it's just informational.
Yep.
Thank you, Casey. Appreciate it.
Okay, yeah, kind of like I said, this could definitely snowball into something larger. So I like Brian's suggestion, and maybe at some point we could think about, depending on what happens here with this complaint, but there could be maybe at least a committee between us and Kidder County to
So,
continue discussion.
one thing that David and I talked about, obviously, it's Roger's portfolio for the Long Lake Creek and Apple Creek scenario. So then Brian could be the second contact in that mix. And then it's not like you're having a board meeting, but you got two managers involved in the details and involved in the discussion, the meetings. We didn't invite Burleigh County, quite honestly, to the Kidder County meeting for a number of reasons, because we're trying to build a foundation of trust out there, and I think we're getting very close to being able to do that. But there will probably be some inter-district meetings with that group. The county commission at their meeting, in the discussion, again, it's non-recorded meeting, they were looking at the county commission handing it to the Water Resource District to facilitate the process. Now, again, understand the Water Resource District is a 3-member board, has not been very active, so a lot of this stuff is new to them. So it's a little bit of a learning curve, to be honest. But I think we can easily make something go forward and get some
Mr.
solution
Chairman,
and
if I
progress.
can just make a comment. Jurisdictional issues are equally as complex. And that's something as the board moves forward and we look at this much larger issue, we're gonna have to see, no pun intended, where the water's edge is for Burleigh County. Kidder County, it sounds like sort of representing, Kidder County, representing Burleigh County landowners in forming a complaint, that's fine, that's not a problem. But when we get those complaints, then the board will have to look at this to see how it divides that whole landowner issue, when in fact it's a larger water issue, we know that, everybody's trying to do that. But, and I think a logical issue might be, is there going to be some kind of assessment district? Is that even reasonable? It's a natural phenomenon. But whatever structure you set up through a joint board, or whatever these joint boards are supposed to do, it's gonna hinge a little bit on those borders, on Burleigh County. So I think the first thing one has to do is to define, from an engineering perspective, what kind of an animal is out there. And we also have federal issues, and we have federal easements out there that really make it more difficult for our Burleigh County landowners to say, not only is this groundwater coming up on your land becoming surface water, so there's no obstruction, but is your easement large enough? Well, that's a federal question, that's not a county question, it's not a district question. So anyway, I'd like to be involved earlier on as we move forward on this, to try to sort that stuff out as things become clearer.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, Dave.
Yeah, and I would add, Mr. Chairman, from the standpoint of the complaint form, you actually looking at comparatives, you have a complaint form online relative to drainage issues already. So anybody can go in there, grab that complaint form, and file it with you. In this particular case, it's a unique scenario because it has to do with obstruction, it has to do with easements, and you're gonna need certain information, and no offense to Barb. Barb says, hey, I got a problem out here, look at it. In this particular case, you're gonna need a little bit more detailed information of what's going on. So I will develop the form, I'll route it by Dave to make sure that, you know, it's consistent with the form that the board should be seeing and information before it actually gets to the landowners for them to complete. So,
Okay.
okay?
Do we anticipate a complaint form or complaint forms? From
Forms, there'll be multiple, and this was one,
How
yeah.
many approximately? Do you know?
I'm gonna go back and do a landowner count, but I'm thinking there's probably in the neighborhood of 50 landowners involved. And the scenario, this is why we kind of want to do the process. Each landowner is going to have their own background information. Here's my property, here's my quarter, and here's how much land is actually impacted. So it's got to be coordinated. It can't be one complaint. The Kidder County Commission said, well, how many landowners is it going to take to actually act on the complaint? And it's kind of no different than a petition process. If you only get 3, you can kind of look at it and say, well, wait a minute, that, you know, what does that mean? If there's 50% of them, then you've got more leverage, if you will, with the Fish and Wildlife Service for them to take action on it.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a little bit of an evolving process, and firmly understand where you're at, Dennis. I think what we're going to want to do initially is to create, we've got a GIS map of their current easements already that they provided, they've got a multitude, obviously. They've got ownership, they have easements, and they've got several different types of easements, whether it's a waterfowl production area or whether it's an actual easement for the structure. So some of that stuff is going to have to be fettered out. I'm hoping that we could get the feds to actually do that for themselves, but I'm not exactly sure where that's going to evolve to.
So are they going to point to a particular obstruction? Maybe you said this already, sorry if I missed it, but what is the obstruction?
Okay, 2 aspects. Number one, they do not have the easements as we see it. You know, maybe they can prove otherwise, but I do not believe so because they actually provide us copies of their easements. They do not have the easements to allow them to store the water above the height of their structure. So they've raised their structure from 1713 to 1716. So the structure is the actual obstruction because it doesn't have the proper easements.
Does the easements go to 1716?
Easements go to 1716.
Clearly there's going to be some head rise above the structure.
Those that we've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, go to 1716.
So
Is
they,
there- Go ahead then.
oh, sorry, so they've raised the structure.
Right.
They modified a structure.
Correct. And they do have a water permit to go to 1716.
Do you know what year approximately the structure was raised?
Yes. It was 2002, I think.
Okay.
It was in the early 2000s.
And they did not go around and get additional, because they just said the easements to 1716 won't be able to build this to 1716. It's not their thought process.
It's interesting because they have some, and they did provide some, but they didn't provide all. And I don't know that it's in this board's prerogative to go search the county records to find out exactly what easements they have. I think you put that back on Fish and Wildlife Service and say provide them for every landowner.
So they didn't account for the bounce, is what you're saying?
Right. Absolutely. They did not.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Dave, I mean, so where does the water board authority come into play when you're dealing with a federal entity? Do we have the power? I want to cut to the chase before we do a bunch of busy work. Do we have the power to issue a remedy to the Fish and Wildlife Service?
Receiving the complaint from Kidder County. Right.
I mean, that's one of many questions. It's, you know, the federal government, there's the supremacy clause. So, you know, we may or may not be able to do that, but that's why I think we look at the extent of the authority that we do have. And then with these easements and that the whole water controversy there with regard to these easements and that flooding, can that be a water district issue simultaneously with a federal issue? It could be in these that we end up in federal court, not that anybody's suing anything, but that the federal court might be the more logical place to resolve what is a federal issue then. I mean, you've got, the water is state water, but those easements are federal. Again, it kind of goes back to what these complainants are going to say, and then we can go forward to say, how broad is this? Are we looking at Kidder County and Stutzman? Are we, you know, Do we need to do that, or can we confine ourselves to the borders of Burleigh County Water District? I don't think we can, but then as we step forward in this, we want to make sure we know what our jurisdiction is. I don't know, I don't have those answers at
Right.
this point.
To Dennis's
I
point,
think we'll
here's,
get more into it when we get those complaints.
here's some of the backgrounding that we've already done. I looked at it because of the federal nexus. My first comment was to go to the water, Department of Water Resources and said, okay, do they have permits for what they built? Because they actually said in their response to us, and it wasn't a Freedom of Information Act, but they did give us the information we asked for freely of their choice. And they said that, hey, we're the federal government. We don't need permits from anybody to build whatever we want on federal property. Now, that being said, I talked to Karen Goff, and Karen Goff says, well, they may think so, but we still require them to file permits, and they have permits and construction documents for all of what, at least in her context, all of what has been done on the refuge. So even though they weren't required, they submitted as a courtesy, the information's there. The other aspect of that is okay, from a construction permit standpoint, but now from a water permit standpoint is another context. And I didn't really get a clear answer from the DWR on this one. Does the state have any supremacy over the federal government using water, that's state water, from a water permit perspective? Their comment was, well, let's see where this goes first as far as the complaints and easements before they step into that. So I've been trying to work, I was hopefully trying to get DWR to actually step in because of the obstruction, because of the permit issue. Did they have a permit to build a structure? But apparently they do, and they did file for that permit. But the state did not require the feds to secure any easements for that project, which may be the federal nexus, and they can still do what they want. Does this leave it in a quagmire, to the chairman's point, quagmire as to a civil issue where the landowners have the ability to file a lawsuit against the federal government for adversely impacting their property? Potentially. There's a lot of different pathways out there, and I think the only way to find these is, get the first investigation and start outlining it and then make some decisions as you go forward. But I have contacted DWR. I do need to get back to them as to the status of this. I have not recently, so. But we'll get the permit documentation from Karen. I do have the water permit documentation already that was provided by the Fish and Wildlife Service, so.
Okay.
I'm just trying to head off us. I want to make sure if we need to be the flag bearer or one of the flag bearers, great. But if we don't or shouldn't, then I don't want to go down a road where we just ultimately say we can't help you, and in the meantime spend a lot of time and effort on it. But that's my point. I'm trying to
Valid point.
Read the tea leaves before we get there.
I agree with you.
Yeah, the complaint process that we're going to maybe get into here in a few months could be that first step, but after that, it could be a different fight altogether. that
Yes.
we don't necessarily.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, just personal observation is that if we can get one drainage complaint with multiple landowners versus 50,
I was wondering the same thing.
I mean, there's certainly efficiency there from our perspective. If they each have a unique story, I guess, maybe,
Right. Here's the
That's a
thought
prerogative, I
process,
guess, but-
and maybe this will help Dennis. I am looking to try and get the Kidder County group, whether it's the County Commission or Water Resource District, to submit the complaint with all of the documentation, and it come from that entity. In other words, on behalf of our residents and Burleigh County residents, it's a single complaint. So we're not dealing with individual complaints. It's a complete process.
we just had one in a separate county from a neighboring county commission, a drainage complaint,
Right.
which is fine. It was a single complaint.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll try to keep this all under one umbrella,
That's the simplest
one actual complaint. Each individual has got their own issues, but it should be a single complaint filing.
Michael, does elevation, I don't remember, was it 1816?
17.
1716.
1716. Does that actually back up into Kidder County?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So it
The-
backs up out of Burleigh County.
They've got a number of elements out there and a number of dams and dikes that are permitted independently or from the state perspective.
And what happens right now with their structure based on size, when Long Lake Creek flows through, goes over their structure, it actually flows north and backfills all the way into Cater County.
Right.
And then they have a structure, which this board looked at back in 2015, that they rebuilt. It's a stop log structure where they can hold water north of one of the roadways if in fact the water from downstream gets too low. In other words, they can maintain a water level higher in the north part of the refuge than the south part of the refuge if in fact there is a drought scenario going on. My concern is, and I have not looked at this in detail, is that technically they could, by that structure, hold water to 1717 or 1718 north of that area, which is in complete violation of their water permit as well as their other permit. Again, there's some things here to fetter through and sift out.
I do remember when they did that, I was involved with some Long Lake projects when I was working, and their main issue is botulism, and so that's why they want to be able to back that up and flood over there. They can lose, I don't know what kind of numbers, a lot of birds in any given year due to botulism, and it's always way back there in the back is
Yep.
where they get it.
The stagnant water.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they need to, if there's inflows, they need to be able to bump that up, and that helps alleviate or shorten that botulism time period. So that's what they're doing.
Yeah, and we can see from what they have facility-wise, we don't know exactly what they're doing or how they're managing their system, but being the engineer that, hey, what are you doing with your bounce, what are you doing with all the other stuff? They do not have a formal management plan or document. They just kind of do what they think is right, which, you know, if I were operating the system, I would not do it that way. But again, this is not the district's issue, it's their issue. So I think that's where they're looking for assistance, is what can we do to manage our system better? And the thing is, the uppers HQ, if you will, from their perspective, needs to advise them or give them dollars to actually do that. And I think this process may spur that. Again, one can say in a perfect world, a complaint comes out and all of a sudden they realize they have an issue, and then we sit back and watch them fix it. No different than the hawk tree scenario. You know, we know it's there, we've identified it, but now the entities that are involved in it, you know, look at it and say, hey, let's figure out how we can solve this on our own. The federal nexus makes it complicated.
Okay, good, robust discussion this morning. Complicated topic for sure. Any other thoughts or questions? I was just curious, Michael, do they have a gauge, obviously, right? Is it a recording gauge? Is it something that there's?
No.
How are they getting these elevations? Are they?
Couple things on this. They have a stage
Yep.
basic on the structure itself, which is where they basically watch where their water's at. Josh was going to check with them and see whether they've got recording,
That's
as
what
to
we're-
whether
okay.
they've recorded it here historically.
Something to look into, Brian, too. That's
We have
something.
already talked to, as part of the Crystal Springs effort, we've already talked to DWR about presence stations,
Yep.
to have recording stations. I think what would be nice at that outlet structure is for them to get a cooperative agreement with the USGS and actually put in a recording station. There was one there during like 2011, but it was temporary. But we do have, in talking to DWR, they're looking at several locations to put in a presence station to monitor water levels on a regular basis. And of course, that's all DWR. That'll come in the online. You can just go in and read it.
Yep.
So, but they've agreed to install those.
Okay.
The fence have.
The state has. Yeah, it's just access.
Right.
Yeah, they're okay with the access
They're
point.
okay with that.
Most of the access points we're looking at are on private property,
Okay, so that's good.
so we're okay there. The only one that we don't have that, you know, to pursue is the one at the structure itself, but there's a stage, I mean, all you gotta do is go
Yeah.
read is 17, and that is actually right at, that one's based on the overflow elevation. So 16 is 16, and then it's 17, so if it's a foot of water flowing over, you'll read 17. It's just a matter of who's reading it, are they recording it, and that we don't know that yet. We'd like to set up a camera, but cameras on federal property might raise a question or two, so.
Okay,
Okay.
very good. Any other thoughts or questions on the board? Okay, we'll see what shakes out next month. Okay.
More to
Thank you,
come.
Michael. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, nothing on as far as closing of any drainage permits and complaints. We can move on to projects this morning. First up, Hogue Island. I think moving on to the second item there, the Chider property. Is there an update this morning on Travis or Michael?
Yeah, on that, I'll just kind of go through it, and Travis, if I miss anything, let me know. Braun Intertech has gone out and done their analysis, but they wanted the river bathymetry in order to do their stability analysis. Now that the water's off, we'll probably go out and get that river bathymetry to actually start monitoring some of that stuff.
Nice.
The web grants application was actually submitted to DWR, and I believe you have in your packet the agreement, cost share agreement for that $38,000 budget to do that at a 50/50 cost share, which is per your agreement with the State Water Commission way back when. So with that, I don't know that there's been any dramatic changes out there, Travis. It is what it is. Maybe you want to
Yeah.
update as to what's out there.
I assume the ice is completely out now?
Yeah,
Or
okay.
close?
Yeah, the ice is completely gone there. I've been kind of keeping an eye on the ice conditions on the river, and I also actually did make a trip out there last week to take a look at the site and take some pictures of it. I didn't get those, my apologies, I didn't get anything submitted in or any discussion on. There hasn't been any dramatic changes, but I compared it with photos that I took last fall, specifically I think ones that I took in October, and it does appear that it's hard to judge because of the grass growth and then, yeah, so like I said, nothing dramatic, but it looks like it might have settled just a little bit more. And so I'm kind of monitoring that and trying to take pictures from the same vantage points just to compare and do side-by-side comparisons on those. But right now, we are working to get the surveyors out there to do the bathymetry in the water. They're not going to be able to get to it this week just due to staffing issues, and also the weather conditions haven't been the greatest because the windy conditions and waves and stuff out there and currents and such, it's a little bit difficult conditions for the drone to do the measurements. So I talked to Todd, and they're looking at trying to get that on the schedule for next week to get that done. And then once we get that surface on the bottom of the river, we can stitch that to the topo that we have on the ground and try to make one continuous surface so we can kind of see what that looks like. And then once we have that, we'll have Wes with Braun Intertech take a look at that and see if there's anything that stands out to him, if there's some kind of a lobe or a movement on there. But right now, from my observations, the current is ripping past there pretty aggressively. So I've even took a couple of videos of that as well. And Michael, now that you're back, I'll probably sit down and go through that with you. You can take a look at it and see what you see. But we're just, again, still monitoring it and trying to still collect some data. Now that the ice is off, we can pursue that survey. And then once we have that, then we'll have a little bit more of a picture to see if we notice anything unusual happening under the water as well. If there's any kind of anomalies with the channel there, but the channel is definitely right in front of this site, and so I would think that anything that does push out there is immediately going to get scoured away. The rocks is still there; all the rocks are in place. There's no major failures going into the water, but there's definitely something happening below ground, and we do have the soil borings from Braun as well, and we can try to combine that with the surface and see if we get a bigger picture of what's happening on that site. So we're still in the data collection stage at this point.
Any questions for Travis? Thanks, Travis. Good update. Travis, maybe you just want to stay. I don't know if you're also going to be providing any updates on the other two locations in the state water plan submittal. But so we had the Roger Conus Park Point.
Yeah, the Roger Jonas site. I just received a call here a couple of days ago from Clay at the DWR. They're looking at trying to go back out there and collect a little bit more aerial imagery of the site, especially also the adjoining properties to the north and the south. They're watching that area and that little reach of the river there because they're seeing some additional potential issues that they want to monitor and keep an eye on. And so they were seeking permissions to access those adjacent properties, and I didn't have any information from those landowners to be able to give them, but I suggested that they contact Roger himself and see if he happens to have phone numbers for his neighbors and would be able to contact them and start the discussion of being able to access those properties, to try to monitor those as well, because there's a windrow revetment just to the south of the Jonas property that there's a little bit, there might be something happening there just kind of on the upstream end of that right before it starts, and we don't want to see any scour get around and behind that and then start compromising the integrity of that armoring as well. And so the state is trying to keep an eye on that and do some active monitoring on there, and also coordinate with their surveyors and their drone technicians to do periodic imagery of that area to monitor for any changes or any potential activity on that they would need to act on and try to reinforce any areas that might be failing. So the state is really monitoring, looking at that reach as well.
Travis, any questions? Travis on that one? Okay, and is there a grant submittal for that one that we're looking into, if there is potentially a project down the road?
Couple things. I think Travis submitted on the planning form,
Okay.
not the actual DWR, because we don't know what the budget might
Right.
be for that. So
Yeah,
very similar to the tiger complaint when we get there.
Yeah, until there's an actual project in mind and something that we have a budget for, there's not really anything to submit until you know what you're submitting. Because I've talked to the state about trying to get something in place so that we have funds available to be able to react to an issue, and they say they can't really approve anything until they have a budget with a description and a scope and an estimated cost in hand to review. We can't just kind of have it as a placeholder, so.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other questions? Okay, let's circle back up to the agreement then with DWR. So that's in your packet. I think I would just like a motion to kind of move forward with the signing of this agreement. We did have Dave review the agreement. Dave had some standard comments we think we've had in the past, Dave, regarding DWR agreements, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the conclusion first, I would advise the board may want to sign it. It's $1,850. You can't litigate it for that.
Right.
My little sermon, though, is the same as it was before. What the state is doing here is acting as an insurance company would, and in my view, they're leaving the subcontractors out to dry. And the subcontractors are citizens too. The access to the courts is federally guaranteed. 14th Amendment, First Amendment, you get access to the court. What happens is when you do this idea of saying, well, you're going to have to pay my attorney's fees if you lose, that has a chilling effect on people saying, well, I'm not going to go to court. I got a good case, but I'm not going to do it. Well, here we have the state of North Dakota acting as an insurance company rather than representing all our citizens. Not that I have an opinion, but I think it's really important that everybody be represented and everybody have access to the court. The board here is acting as an intermediary. They are the sponsor of getting this money. So they're kind of complicit in this whole idea of and the people who take it in the shorts would be a subcontractor if they sue and lose. If they sue and win, they win. There's nothing here that says the subcontractor wins, and gets his attorney's fees. If I were the subcontractor, I'd ask for that. This whole idea, and forgive me, little sermon, no collection plate, but we operate under the American rule in North Dakota. The European rule says if you lose, you pay the other guy's attorney's fees. The American rule says everybody gets to go to court. The attorney's fees, unless you specifically agree in writing, you don't get the other guy's attorney's fees. That lets everybody an equal chance. Here we don't have that, but for this amount of money, you can litigate it.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Dave.
Yep.
So, yeah, hearing that, I think we'll need a motion. Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, no problem signing it. Mr. Chairman, Board, Dave, there has been a change in legal counsel, probably since this was discussed over at the state.
Really? Is
Well-
Matt no longer there, or?
The previous one, yeah, Matt, it is, I think they got on staff.
Yep.
Legal
Yeah,
counsel
actually,
on.
in-house counsel now.
Well, let me,
Jen Burleigh.
let me check with them. I didn't know that. The
But
board would, well,
I don't
I can
wanna,
do that right away.
I don't want to hold up signing of this
Right.
if it's time
It wouldn't
critical.
hurt maybe to, if you.
It wouldn't hurt, and I can notify the board after my conversation.
It's Jen Burleigh, you know Jen?
Okay,
Yep.
good. Let me contact him right away. Thank
Or
you.
her,
Jennifer
Jen,
Berlinger.
Jennifer Burleigh.
I'll-
We can send you the contact info.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. All right, I will entertain a motion to sign the agreement and move forward with the cost share reimbursement.
So moved.
Okay?
Second?
Got a motion by Manager Smith and a second by Manager Manger to approve the agreement and have it signed and then submit for reimbursement. Wendy, take roll call vote, please.
Manager Maker,
Yes.
Manager Mitchell,
Yes.
Manager Reed,
Yes.
Manager Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Lineberger.
Yes, motion passes. Okay, that will be signed and submitted. All right, we can move on. If there's anything else on Hogue Island, we can move on to the Apple Creek slide this morning. I don't know, Manager Smith or Michael?
Yeah, just kind of give you some background. Obviously, I've been out for a while, so we have before you this morning specific authorization 30, amendment number 1. We've had a lot of discussions relative to the University of Mary stopping their evaluation and monitoring of the process because they feel that while their grant process is done, they no longer have any funds to pursue with that. We've had very good cooperative efforts with BAR to move forward, and we've gotten, in essence, Braun Intertech has taken over the monitoring wells, the inclinometers. The data has been consistent across the board relative to how to go in and they use very similar equipment as far as their wires and stuff, so we were able to go in and set a baseline for our monitoring through Braun and BGC versus what BAR had. We're still noticing the similar movements that have been talked about before, but in that process, obviously there's an additional cost for Braun and BGC to complete that monitoring from now until August, which will be the end point of the Water Resource District's grant with DES. We have some additional costs on our side from Houston Engineering where we will be going out a little bit on the overall management side. You'll see that in the documentation that I emailed. A little bit more from the standpoint is that we want to do one LiDAR collect as far as the transfer, be LiDAR collect this spring to document what the conditions are this spring, and then one more this fall. I would liken the fall one to be, it's necessary to see if there's movement in the system between those two dates. If I would question the need for the second one only on the aspect of if everything seems to be stable and there's no additional movements out there, is it necessary? So we may make that decision later on in the fall. But before you is the change order and the additional costs. DES has informed us that they do not have any more HMGP money available to cost share. If in fact it were available to cost share, it would be available to you. So if somebody doesn't spend all their money, there may be some more monies available. The process that I have going forward, the quarterly report is due before I think April 15th, which means I'll probably finish that up today. They also will be looking for a request for reimbursement. We've done one already on the project. We would do a second one now. We would not be, at this point, based on the analysis, requesting all of the funds that have been allocated from the DES at this point. So in other words, even though with the increase in costs, those increasing costs are actually occurring after this point going forward, mostly. So we have the increased costs in the two items, and Chairman pointed out, and I did look, I do not have a breakdown of those costs in the email.
For the BGC.
For the
portion.
BGC, but I have asked for them from Caitlin, so I'll get those and we'll put those in the record. DES is gonna wanna see them if in fact they authorize any additional funds.
Sure.
So we need that for, not only for the board, but for DES.
We will be submitting in the quarterly report or kind of outside the quarterly report form. The quarterly report is basically a FEMA documentation, but DES likes information in the background, and we'll be submitting this to them so they know exactly the extent of the work, the extent of the additional work that's going to be accomplished. From that, the total contract costs, and I just did a quick balance here, I didn't get everything on my spreadsheet. The original contract amount was $310,386. The eligible amount was $302, or about $302,000. The uneligible or the non-eligible portion was the emergency action plan that came out of there. I have been working with Mary Sanger on that. I had a conversation with her the other day on how we might be able to finish that up and make that available. The new cost of the total is $355,595, but that increases the Water Resource District's share, obviously, because there's not cost share for the remaining amount. So, if
This
you've
is,
got,
this is for the total for SA number 30,
right,
okay, which includes Braun.
Braun, BGC,
BGC.
and HEI.
Yep.
It includes Houston as well.
Yep.
But I will get those breakdowns to put those in the contract amount.
Okay.
And if you'll look, it's about 365 with all the phases involved, so.
Okay.
I gotta qualify some of those numbers, so. But from that standpoint, we continue to monitor. There is a little bit of additional movement that continues to occur. The extent of that and the meaning, if you will, remains to be determined. We had a little bit of movement this spring. Obviously, the water came out of the ground, the movement was frost and everything else.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering with this, recent snow pack too, and just, some of that melting going on.
Right.
Just the timing, because the ground had kind of thawed out a little bit and opened up, and then we got the snow, and so it's more water working its way down into that.
One of the ones we've talked about, there is out there, they do have a drainage collection system. There is erosion on the surface that's occurring out there that should be maintained. The maintenance of that is the university's responsibility. So at some point in time, as we go forward, we'll have to have additional conversations with them relative to what they're doing in the site. I did notice one area this winter that had a significant ice damming effect, if you will. In other words, I think the removal system froze. The water came up out of the ground and started running down the hill again. But I have not been out there to validate that claim, and I'll visit with Caitlin and Wes on what that might be and what that might mean long-term.
And I assume, Casey, your group has done some recent drone.
Yeah, they continue to do the drone flights.
It'd be good to, maybe if you get some of those, to send those, so we can maybe pass them along to the board too.
Yep.
Some updated photos.
Typically, when I get those, I do forward, but
Yep.
I've been out for a while, so
Yep.
I might have missed
Oh.
one in between here,
Yep,
so
I get
I will
that.
get those to you.
Okay. All right, so in front of the board today would be this review and approval of this SA number 30 increase with the additional, I don't know what we're calling it, Michael, but, the additional.
Basically, it's expanded services to continue the site monitoring that's not
Monitoring
being
of
done
that.
by University of Mary.
And at this point, Barr has provided all the information necessary to do
Yes,
this.
Barr has completed their report. We've got a copy of their report. We've read through it. There's some discussions about the content, and, we're looking at the additional data and does it change what they've done? But they've been very cooperative in providing all of the data and the equipment and stuff to switch over the monitoring. So we've established baselines for everything that they've done, and we're comfortable with what we're finding.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on this?
We don't have a lot of options, right?
Well, yeah, I think at this point, we want to get it to the finish point, which is what this change order would do. That would hopefully get us to this summer and get some additional monitoring and get this thing to, we can put a little bit of a bow on it.
Right.
Yep. So,
Well, I move we cover the additional cost.
the approval of the change order for SA
Approval
30.
of the change order.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Manager Smith and a second by Manager Mitchell to approve the change order to SA number 30 with Houston, which includes increased costs for Braun and BGC. Wendy, you take, any questions on that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and HEI, right?
Yep.
And so just to clarify, the total amendment amount, I was just trying to figure that out, is about 58,000, is that right?
That's in the ballpark.
Okay. And then I would just maybe ask, the complete amount wasn't in our packet. We received a separate email, I think.
Separate email.
From Mike. So just want to, maybe, I don't know, Wendy, if you can put it in the packet after retroactively, so it gets in the record, so it's easier to track in the future, but that's my only question, so thanks.
Okay.
And with that, Wendy, if you'll wait until we get the distribution and breakdown of costs, which I should have shortly, I'll get that to you.
Put all that in the packet.
Along with the invoice that was passed out today, and that can all be placed in the record for today. Thanks, Ben.
Okay, we'll let Wendy catch up on that. Any other questions on this? Any thoughts? Okay, Wendy, take roll call vote, please.
Manager Mager,
Yes.
Manager Mitchell,
Yes.
Manager Reed,
Yes.
Manager Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Landenberger.
Yes, motion passes. Is that all pretty clear, Wendy? Next steps, okay.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, one
Yep.
note I want to put out here. Part of the reason I called the emergency manager on emergency action plan, Mary Sanger is obviously taking the county administrator position. She'll be starting
Oh.
at April 12th. So, but from that, she's going to continue to the duties relative to the emergency management scenario and including this emergency action plan until such time as they hire somebody new.
Replace her position there.
Update. So congratulations on that move. But again, we've not lost the context or continuity of what's going on relative to this with her transition.
Okay, okay. Thanks, Michael. Okay. Gotta cover those items. Emergency action plan. Okay, anything else on Apple Creek slide?
No.
Okay. We can move on to other old business this morning. Regarding the Burleigh County CRS, I don't know, Mitch, I see you're here this morning. I don't know if you've got a update for us, but it seemed like we received a non-compliance listing.
Good morning, members of the board, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it's been sporadic communication with FEMA. They've been out of office, kind of radio silence with them. I did get a letter, basically a spreadsheet of compliance information of all the projects that I gave them that has been through Burleigh County. And basically, it's an RFI. They're asking for more information. And the problem is if you send in FEMA the wrong information, it's automatically a violation. So would like some help if I can ask this board with Houston to go over these documents and make sure that they're correct before we send them to FEMA. The last time I talked to Matt Lafferty was in February. I haven't heard back from them. So,
Okay.
but I do want to respond. I don't know if they're even at work or if they're even receiving emails. But I would like to get this off the table.
How much effort is there, you think, Mitch? I mean, how many documents have you seen them, Mike, at all, Mike?
Yeah, I haven't seen the actual documents, but I did visit with Mitch this morning, and I'll just pull a number, say you had 100 documents. A lot of them Mitch can handle in-house because it's just information that needs to be transmitted that wasn't submitted the first time around, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I'm guessing. I don't know why they're asking for it because half of them that they're asking for a lot of the DOT projects. And I know we had the information for them because I was dealing with the DWR on all that information. And so it's kind of like I want to be careful what I send them to make sure that this is not going to come back as a violation and send more documents and back and forth. And so I can gather the information, but if I could have somebody collaborate with that and make sure that they're correct.
And then there probably are a few in there that would require technical assistance and a little bit of additional review. Not necessarily on the ground, but potentially to step through those processes. And I guess the scenario what Mitch and I talked about, if the board would, is okay with us being available to assist in that process, we would do that as needed, not necessarily, come up and do something that they can do, but just provide that additional assistance.
Any thoughts or questions, or is there consensus there? Have Michael assist, or Houston assist, and Mitch on this process? I mean, still hopefully getting us to the end goal of getting this approved, getting the CRS in place, or?
There are violations early back in 2019 and 2020 when I first started. So those are gonna have to be addressed. It takes a long time. We've worked 3 years on the one violation in Apple Creek, and that hopefully is coming towards the correction by the end of this year.
Okay.
But these violations keep coming. I have one up on Hogue Island. We built the building, got a permit, no EC, nothing. And I issued a stop work order. He came and got a permit. I told him what we needed, and I said I needed EC. And he said, I'm not going to pay $2,500 for an EC for a 5,000 square foot or $5,000 building or whatever he was saying. So I actually went out and found him a surveyor for a that would charge only $500 for this EC, and he still hasn't replied. It's hard to describe some of these situations, but they just come up right out of nowhere, and yeah, it's just part of this job.
Yep.
And this application.
Right.
So,
Okay. Consensus, board? Okay. All right. Help out as you can.
I would like to bring up one other thing, Mr. Chair. Currently, we're going over our ordinances in Burleigh County because of the transfer area of the ETA. One of the big differences that we have is in the floodplain administration in that area. They did not regulate the 500-year or the X zone, the shaded X zones, but we do. And there's consideration of either adopting the 500-year for this area or not. And so I would like to bring this to the board and make some presentations for this before I take it to the Planning Commission, because this is a very highly technical question, and it's going to affect a lot of property owners. Not a lot, but quite a few. And we've been regulating the 500-year in Burleigh County for years. And so now that we've inherited this ETA area, what should we do here?
Right. How do we administer that?
I mean, the easy way to figure that to consider this is to say everything prior to 2026 is non-conforming. It's fine, but anything going forward will be regulated to 500-year. Which, if you have a building that was not elevated in the 500-year, and now you're looking at these elevation requirements in 2026, these buildings are non-compliant. They want to do any work, they want to do any additions, they don't want to do it's all substantial improvements, but substantial damage type situations. So it is a big consideration for their houses even. If they build a single family home in the 500-year, there's nothing required.
Yeah. And
here we come, well, you're BFE, you're 2 feet below the BFE on this brand new house.
Yeah, Mitch, I'm not sure what our jurisdiction would be for this board, but we could certainly kind of listen to your presentation and see if we can offer any
Yeah, I'm
guidance or.
I think the technical side of this needs to
Yeah.
be considered more than what the Planning Commission can provide. Not any reflection on the planning commissioners. It's they're not familiar with what we're talking about here.
Sure.
And I think, Mr. Chairman, I was involved in that process, and the county commission, through Chairman Bittner at the time, specifically looked at regulating the development in the 500-year, because we've got a lot of areas where it's a very small difference between the 100-year and the 500-year. And you remember, Burleigh County does not allow basements below the BFE. The city of Bismarck does. So that's going to be a change. If anybody bought a lot in one of these areas, it's now over, they can no longer build a basement. From a technical perspective, that's prudent. They're not going to like it. I get that. The other aspect of it is the regulatory issue in the 500-year is tied back to the 100-year BFE. So all it is if you're 500-year and you're really close, you're still regulated. You need to be 2 feet above the BFE, the regular 100-year BFE. So the base flood elevation. So I think there's a context of, you're right, Mitch, and how do you present this to the Planning Commission so that the context can be understood and the purpose behind it. I think what the county did at the time, working with the county commission at that time and the Planning Commission, that was prudent for regulating in the floodway, or floodplain, I should say. I think it's beneficial in the CRS side of the equation, but the city of Bismarck did not adopt it. So now you've got this difference between these new city areas that are, shall I say, city jurisdiction, extraterritorial, that are now in the county. And those landowners need to, they're either going to have to comply with it, or as Mitch said, do you grandfather everything prior to this date, but anything beyond that, you have to do that. So there's some decisions to be made, and I think it's a prudent technical discussion to protect those residents. I'll tell you where the county perspective was visiting with the commissioners back when, and the emergency manager. We had 400 plus, and I use that number loosely because I don't have the exact number, structures during 2011 that were impacted. And a lot of them were, basically their crawl spaces were full of water. They couldn't get to their house, but not only did the crawl spaces filled with water, they got moldy and everything else. And all that can be avoided with new construction following this rule. So, when people are developing in the floodplain, the conversation was that time, okay, we had 400. Do we wait for the event to again, and then now we have 800 because we didn't change the ordinance? And I'm just pulling numbers out of the sky for numbers, but the context is there. So that was the purpose for the change. Yeah. And it's a prudent change. But how do you explain that to the new residents that are now going to have to
How do you administer it? Yeah.
administer it to that?
Yeah.
So
A good example is up in Hoger Island.
Mhm.
That was all in the 2014 maps, that was all 500 year. Now it's all 100 year. But we elevated them. And so they're very close to the current BFE. They're a little hot, they're a little low because the BFE was raised up there. But imagine if we didn't, they'd be 2-3 feet below.
Right.
And so it's, I think that the consideration of these technical responsibilities should be weighed out before we go to the planning commission. If I could bring it to this board to consider.
Yeah. Bring it to us and we can discuss.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think, Mitch, there's opportunity to, excuse me, I'm getting a cold. There's opportunity to create some graphic exhibits which should show that.
Right.
Because this is one of those you almost need to see it to understand it. I mean, I can explain it
Yeah.
from a technical perspective, but the
Graphically.
layperson is going to say, well, what does that really mean to me?
Yeah.
And I think we can assist you with that, Mitch, and put some of those drawings together, so, or illustrations, I should say.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Mitch. Okay. Moving on to item B there. Of course, we had the notice of the hearing there in March with Garrison Conservancy District. Michael, you were there? at
Yes.
the Hearing, the updates or?
Interesting conversation between the various parties. I was there on my own recognizant. I presented some background information where the Burleigh County Commission Water Resource District at the time and myself with American Engineering was looking at providing the opportunity for water supply for irrigation. The landowner residents at that point in time basically declined. So that's bottom line information about what I presented. But the county presented its position. The board listened to that position. There were several others that were in opposition and several others that were in favor of keeping status quo, if you will. My understanding, talking to the Conservancy District, is, again, on my own recognizance, not representing the board in this case, that they're tabulating the information and
They have not put it on the C district agenda for a decision yet. But it may be at their next one, it may be at the following one. But the information from the county was presented. I think there was some discussion at the county commission meeting last night I didn't watch. But,
Or Monday.
yeah, and it was one of those, there were some technical audio issues which were kind of disappointing, but they happen. But the scenario is that the board has the information and they will consider and make their decision, so.
Curious who else was there in opposition, I guess, besides?
Curtis Junt was a landowner representative. He was one who spoke before the city or the county commission. I know Curtis personally, he's an engineer, so he's got some background. And then there was a landowner from Stutzman County. I can't think of his name right now, but he represents Flint Township from a number of perspectives. And he was just there. He just made an observation.
Oh.
But that was really everybody who was opposed. I think Mark Splunskowski, county auditor, got up and spoke as well in opposition based on the dollars and the funds that are, being spent.
Sure.
On the proponent side, to maintain status quo and stay in the district, was myself, Ken Royce, Danny Quizel, and Kevin Clipville from the Bismarck Parks and Rec. I think that was the extent of that. The hearing was interesting in the fact that they took it almost as a legal hearing. They didn't ask questions back and forth. They just said, present your testimony, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
So there wasn't, an opportunity for open dialogue.
Ken Royce had called me and asked if he could mention during his testimony about Burleigh County's passing of our resolution.
Right.
And I said, yeah, that's certainly public information. Did he?
I believe he did that.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
doing some other things when he was speaking, so.
Okay.
But I believe he covered that. He also covered a number of things I thought were interesting for this board's perspective, is that the Conservancy District, and you got to realize where Ken's background is.
Right.
Ken was a member of this, or chairman of this board for years. He also was the Garrison Diversion representative for Burleigh County. He was also chairman of the Conservancy District. So he pointed out that a lot of things that are out there, the normal constituent isn't aware of. And if you ask them about it, they wouldn't have a clue because that's not something that's a common knowledge, if you will. But that the Conservancy District handles those on behalf of all the residents of Burleigh County and all the other 28 member counties. One that I just passed out, or I sent it in an email, there's an amendment to the Dakota Water Resources Act that is up for consideration right now that specifically lists South Central. Okay, there's a lot of people that say, well, that money's going to come to you anyway. And the fact of it is the only vehicle for that money to arrive to the state and be utilized for those projects is through the Conservancy District. That's the, if you want to call it the federal nexus. Is it pass-through money? It is, but that's the process to where it gets to the State Water Commission and others for distribution under the MR&I funds. So that particular bill, which was submitted by Representative Fedorchak, I think it was the 19th of March, is an extension of the Dakota Water Resources Act, and it includes money for South Central. So it's interesting to understand the larger picture. And to that point, as Ken Rice pointed out, the normal constituent in Burleigh County would not even know or even understand or see that level of detail, but that's what the Conservancy District offers to the county. So, thank you.
Good. Okay. Any questions for Michael? Any thoughts on that topic? Okay, hearing none, we can move on to item C, the agenda book scanning. I don't know, Wendy, any updates?
I believe she has finished scanning, I just have to put it on the website.
Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you. And then, I don't know, Brian, any updates on the aerial photos for DWR?
No updates. I think this agenda item was just kind of like
Yep,
decision
hold
point
over.
of what we're going to do with them once they become our possession again.
Yeah, and
But yeah, no updates.
So maybe, Brian, I'll toss this out there. From the perspective that we gave them to them, couldn't they decide whether they want to archive and not give them back to us so that we have to, this board has to do anything? It's no different than any other photo that they have.
I think they're saying, do you want them back? And I-
Yeah. I would say no.
Let them keep it.
Let them keep it and archive them on their own.
Sounds good.
Keep the process simple from this board's
Consensus there?
perspective.
I mean, that'll be on the website, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
They'll be digitally backed up, and then they'll also be available for download, so we could have a copy if we wanted.
And they will aerial rectify them for for
Yeah.
data. And I believe they now hired somebody to replace Rob Baszler, because Rob has taken a new position as well, just for
he has to?
background. Yeah, he's still with DWR, but he's moved.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, consensus to have Brian reach out and let them know that they can keep them or do whatever they want with them, as long as we get our digital.
Yep.
Okay,
Sounds good.
okay, thank you. Okay, if that's it for old business, we can move on to new business this morning. On your packet on page 28 through 34 is, well, I guess first there's the dredging permits for Burleigh Park District. I don't know, Michael or Travis, you guys were
Generally
assisting.
speaking, the request, if you remember, was that because of Burleigh County,
Yep.
or because of the Bismarck Park District no longer assisting the Burleigh County Park District, that Burleigh County needed those permits. And I believe those dredging permits have been submitted now. Travis can touch on that.
Okay.
They're basically maintenance permits that come up every year, so it's just a matter of getting the paperwork through.
Yes, those PCNs or pre-construction notice for the Corps of Engineers, those have been submitted for both the NIFL and the Kimball Bottoms boat ramps. We've got those in. I just been in correspondence with the Corps. They had a question on one of them just yesterday, in fact, and I responded to that. So they're in the process of reviewing those permits at this point. And then once we hear back from them or they get approved, then we could move forward with the actual dredging project. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, they're in process right now.
okay.
And from that perspective, as far as assistance go, we're probably going to be involved with the contractor selection and assisting on the contracting side. Doesn't take an awful lot of work to get the contractor out there, but
It'd be good to have some other eyes on it too.
yeah, I'm sure we'll get the same contractor that has done it before,
Okay,
in all reality, but we'll work with him on that. So,
okay,
okay.
thank you. All right, now we had the public notice that's in your packet there on page 28 for a project on the, kind of behind the North Walmart there. There's a development looking to get constructed, so there's some additional work that has to be done regarding the creek that runs through that property. And so the Corps is just reaching out for comments so certainly if you review that information, if you got any concerns or comments, you can be reached out directly to the Corps through those documents. And
Yeah,
it's in-
full disclosure on that, Houston Engineering put together the information for this submittal, for this permit.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's also tied back to, there are actually two parts of this. One is the developer piece and the other is for the county roadway improvement.
Right.
So, but they do go together, that's the process, so.
Okay. I did visit with Casey a little bit before the meeting, just kind of regarding the kind of what type of structures they were looking to put in the creek, and it sounds like they're placing, was it 5 48-inch culverts? Yeah,
Yeah.
at each location, so. Okay. No other comments on that one. We do have, sounds like the city of Bismarck's changing their pointed, or adding an additional point of diversion for their intake.
I think just adding the quantity, changing the quantity.
Oh, changing the quantity.
I think, if I saw that correctly.
Okay.
That would be my thought.
Okay. I was thinking maybe it had an additional point of diversion, but,
I didn't check though, so I do see that it says,
yeah, then the information in the packet there talks about. Oh, yeah, because the additional diversion located at the northeast quarter of section 6. And the original had the section 31, and then the southeast quarter of section 6, but. I'm not aware of what they're doing, but I don't think it really pertains to us specifically.
trying to think. No, it shouldn't be a concern from a Burleigh County water perspective. But, yeah.
Okay. NDERF is having their annual meeting, so there's information in your packet here regarding that. Certainly we're members of Ender, so if anybody feels the need to want to attend, you certainly can. There's a process in there, you can fill out the information and send in. I don't think we've ever sent anybody that I'm aware of in the past, but, and then there is a proxy in here where basically we can vote, if you feel so inclined, for their board members. There's a couple of, so we can, there's a strong feeling to want to vote, we certainly can, or we don't have to either, so. Any thoughts on that? Okay, we'll probably just pass on that then. Okay, but it is in the packet for information. If you are interested in reading that and doing more, you certainly can. I don't know, Michael or anybody, did anybody attend the AOP, the U.S. Army Corps?
Yeah, I attended the AOP meeting. It was attended by roughly 30-plus people. The general discussion, some of it came down to lake access up on Skakawea. The flows are generally going to be low this summer. They just, in the last couple days, lowered the elevation of Lake Skakawea from 34 down to like 30. It's like 4 feet lower for midsummer high flows or midsummer elevation. So that creates a number of issues. Obviously, that will potentially reduce the discharges through Bismarck. I do not have an update on what the discharges through Bismarck will be at this point. But like I said, that change just came within the last couple days.
Yeah, I think I saw it's less than 20,000.
Right.
I think you're looking at maybe 19,000. That's just the basic condition.
Right. And
If
so
it's lower, if it even gets worse, now you look at the snowpack right now in the
It's not
mountains,
there.
it's like in the 60 percentile.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's-
won't say it's the lower, real close to the lowest on the 30-year average.
Yeah, which at that point, if that slips into the lower basic, then we're looking at flows of like 17,000, 18,000 through those.
Right.
It's usually what you see in August and September.
Right now, where that influences what's going on, it goes back to the boat ramp and the dredging
Yep.
in order to have access to the river. We're working with a number of private clients that are going to be doing some dredging to make sure that they have access based on those reduced flows.
Okay.
So, but other than that, yeah, they're just lower than normal. There were a lot of good questions. There were a number of new people at the AOP meeting, which is good. There are, I don't know the dates, but there is one virtual AOP meeting that is going to be offered as well here, and that may have already occurred, but.
Did you get, you didn't grab the presentation? I'm still trying to find the presentation materials.
Yeah,
Well,
it'd be-
and it's interesting. I
usually be fine
almost
then.
grabbed one and then I didn't, and then I looked up there and they were gone because others had picked them up. What is disappointing, and I'm going to express this to a number of different people at the core level, is that if you go on their site to their link, and it's the 2025 presentation. So, don't know that they don't want us to know, but they were there to tell us about it. So, yeah,
Right.
I'm going to rattle, I think her name's Colleen, the information manager, and say, hey, you got to make it easy for people to actually get this or to be able to touch base with it. Same presenters, new gal from the National Wildlife or National Weather Service, but you know we don't have any snowpack.
Right.
You drive around the country, a lot of the sloughs are full, but we don't have any snowpack. There's, from a flood situation this spring, there shouldn't be any issues at all. There's very little flow.
Yeah. Not looking too good in the Colorado Basin either.
No,
Yeah.
So I just went onto the site. It's there. As of Sunday, they dropped it to 14,000 discharge from Garrison. That'll go up in May, of
Right.
course, but
Yep.
I don't know what,
they are in their water conservation mode right now.
Sakakawea is at 1827.
Yep.
I mean, there's only 15,000 coming into Sakakawea.
That's going to be the thing this spring. You just won't see the rise. It'll be,
Yeah.
unless we get, unless things change, but,
6 inches of rain.
yep.
It happened in '93. It can happen again.
That happened in 2011.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, thanks, Michael.
Yep.
Yeah, if you do get your hands on that presentation,
Yeah,
maybe we could
I
add
like
to
it.
the packet next month if we do get that.
Okay.
All right, item G there in your packet, that you'll see that there's a temporary water permit for Knife River, pretty standard.
Mr. Chairman, if I can
Yes.
just make a comment on that. This involves the east branch of Apple Creek, and actually, my family has a part of that. There are approximately 8 landowners who are senior appropriators to Knife River.
Okay.
Last year was very dry. This year looks like it's even drier. We came down to July. I worked with Boston and DWR to say this is getting crucial now for the senior appropriators. And I see that DWR has come up with new language in this temporary water permit. There is no definition of a minimum flow in Apple Creek yet, and Boston is we're talking about options. The best one would be to establish the stream gauge somewhere there so the DWR could get that information immediately and not have people come out. I know in the past, the senior appropriators have self-reported with gauges installed by the state engineer, so we could see what the water levels were, give it to them, and then they could decide on enforcement issues. So just a heads up to the board, if we're going to be drier this year than last year, I don't know where this is going to go.
Okay. And they are looking at a maximum withdrawal rate for this one of 2,000 gallons a minute. Dave, is that a concern then?
It is for us, I believe.
Okay.
And something that bears monitoring.
So you as the landowners, water permit holders, do you guys submit comments then to the
Yes,
state engineer?
yes.
Okay, for their consideration of approving this or not? Okay. Do they have a wash plant out there, I'm assuming? Is that what?
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. That's it for new business. You do have available to you some additional correspondence and documents regarding plats of stormwater management plans, available upon request that Wendy does have. I'll just read through the ones that are in here. Meadows and preliminary plat, the Arcadia Light Estate subdivision plat, the Midwest Business Park Second Edition, the EAH subdivision, and the CJB subdivision. So if you would like to see additional information on any of those, certainly reach out to Wendy and she can provide those. So. Okay. No other questions on that? We can move on to approval of bills this month. Manager Reap.
Mr. Chairman, board members, page 48 is a summary of the bills. Couple things to note, we already talked about the Bismarck Parks and Rec invoice that does include the purchase of that tractor, so it's quite large.
And there'll be that credit next month.
And then, yeah, we'll get a credit for about $2,390
Okay.
in the following one. And so, the other thing I was gonna mention, well, there's one for me, which is unusual. That's, as my position as Secretary Treasurer, I use office products, and so there's an annual fee to use those. That's how they do that anymore, and so that's what that reflects. I just got it, and I asked Wendy to include it on this month's, and so otherwise it would have went through my expenses, but that's why that's there. And then we do have 2 bills that came in since the packet were prepared that I think we should consider paying. One is from Houston Engineering, and it's related to the Apple Creek project, and so in approving it, we can get that submitted for reimbursement from the DES, is my understanding. So we don't have a check ready for them at this point, but we'll get that prepared and approved here, hopefully. That's in the amount of $4,570.50. And then Bliss Law Firm didn't get theirs in time to get it in the packet. I would suggest we consider approving that at this meeting, and that's for $3,629.60. So that would bring the total to $176,888.63. And I would move for approval of payment of that amount.
Okay, you said 176,888.63?
Yep,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay.
Second.
Got a motion by Manager Reap and a second by Manager Smith to approve this month's bills in the amount of $176,888.63 as the additional 2 bills that we talked about. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, Wendy, take roll call vote, please.
Manager Mager,
Yes.
Manager Mitchell,
Yes.
Manager Reap,
Yes.
Manager Smith,
Yes.
Chairman Landenberger.
Yes, motion passes. Bills will be paid.
Mr. Chairman, quick note. We did have accounting update the invoice, so there's actually invoice rather than just the project status report. Wendy has that for the one that was submitted for Apple Creek, so she can put that in the record. And I just received the documentation for the BGC and Braun breakdown for costs. I'll put that whole package together and submit it to Wendy so that it's in a complete package. She doesn't have to sort it or anything.
Okay.
So, but I do have that information now, so,
Okay. Good, thank you, Michael.
thank you.
Okay, you do have additional information in your packet there from page 49 through 111, just some additional details on the billing. Our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, May 13th at 8 a.m. in this same room. Everybody can make that meeting. Okay, one thing I did want to mention to the board today, I am looking at a vacation in August, the week we have our meeting. We could maybe talk about potentially, you don't have to do it today, but maybe we could move the meeting, or I could call in as well. Just something we could think about. We don't have to discuss today, but I think it's scheduled for like August 12th or something like that. So, anyway, we don't, like I said, we maybe bring it back up next month, but just something to think about. So between now and then. So, okay. Anything else this morning? Okay, if there's no other business before the board, we are adjourned.